Hi everyone, I'm Gaylord Brewer, sequestered in Tennessee.
My name is Gloria Bain. I'm from Mexico.
My name is Don Zancanella, and I'm coming to you from Boise, Idaho.
Hi, my name is Karen Mitchell.
Hello, my name is John Sibley Williams.
I'm Meg Pokras, and I'm here today for the Emrys Review launch.
My name is Janice Steele. I'm so pleased to be part of the Emrys Journal virtual launch party.
Hello, my name is Josephine McMullen, and I'm the president of the Emrys Foundation, which is based in Greenville, South Carolina. Since 1984, Emrys has devoted itself to creating a vibrant home for writers and readers that celebrates the power of words. One of the most salient ways we've done that is by curating the award-winning and nationally recognized Emrys Journal, a collection of fiction, poetry, and creative nonfiction that Emrys has published for almost 40 years. We are thrilled to publish the very best work from writers from the upstate of South Carolina and across North America. Their work represents some of the very best writing happening today. Now, in an ordinary year, Emrys invites members of the community to join us in hearing Emrys Journal writers read excerpts from their work in front of a live audience at our annual launch party. But as you may have noticed, this is not an ordinary year. But at Emrys, we refuse to let adversity dampen our passion for words and the power of storytelling. So welcome to the virtual launch party for volume 37 of the Emrys Journal. You're about to see videos of some of this year's writers reading from our new collection. We're happy to share them with you now, and we hope you'll take some time soon to settle in and savor the complete collection, which is available in printed form, as an ebook, and via the Emrys Online Journal's website. You can also rewatch your favorite authors read from their works on our website at emrys.org or on our YouTube channel and on our social media pages. Finally, I'd like to personally thank everyone who contributed their time and financial resources to make this year's Emrys Journal and our launch party happen. You are too numerous to name here, but I would specifically like to thank our Communications and Operations Manager, Jamie Keekstra, for gathering and editing these videos. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Metropolitan Arts Council that provided generous financial support. Now I'd like to turn the program over to Katie Burgess, the very talented editor of the Emrys Journal. Katie holds a PhD in fiction from Florida State University and is a wonderful writer in her own right. She will be introducing you to some of the writers we're honored to feature here tonight. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to the virtual launch of the 37th volume of Emrys Journal. I'm Katie Burgess, editor of the journal, and I'm so proud to present this beautiful issue with cover art by local artist Aidan Ricker. The writing in here was selected from the hundreds of submissions we read over the reading period last summer. There's a great variety of fiction, nonfiction, poetry, and interviews. If you like what you hear, I hope you'll head over to emrys.org, that's emrys.org, and purchase a copy of the journal, or 10. Thanks, and I hope you enjoy these readings as much as I enjoyed putting the issue together.
Hi everyone, my name is Don Zancanella, and I'm coming to you from Boise, Idaho. I'll be reading the beginning of my story, Feed Them, Across the Threshold. Trina Callahan of Boise, Idaho is in her third year of teaching when she applies to an exchange program. To her delight, she receives an invitation to spend the year at Leighton Middle School in the town of Leighton Buzzard, northwest of London. She's always lived with her parents, even while in college. Now she'll get to visit a new country and have a place of her own. The process of relocating turns out to be surprisingly easy. She goes online and finds a place to live, packs efficiently, and says goodbye to her friends. Upon landing in London, she sails through customs and immigration, figures out what bus to take from Heathrow, and as she steps across the threshold of her new apartment, feels herself being transformed from an unsophisticated American who's never quite stopped being a teenager into a grown-up citizen of the world. The following day, she goes to the school and asks to see the head teacher. A call is put into the office, and a tall, silver-haired woman named Mrs. May appears. The Cedars. Mrs. May has her sign some papers and then takes her on a tour. They look at the art room, the lunch room, and the great hall, which appears to be a sort of gymnasium where large gatherings can be held. Trina is surprised to see that despite an exterior of weathered gray stone and gables, the school is quite modern inside. It reminds her of a Target store, chilly fluorescent lighting, and an overuse of primary colors, especially cherry red. Next, they go outside and cross the parking lot to a large 3-story structure that looks like a Georgian mansion. Mrs. May calls it the Cedars and informs Trina that her classroom will be on the 2nd floor. Unlike the first building, this one is antique inside as well as out. They climb a wide oak staircase with a curving banister and then continue down a dim hallway until Mrs. May stops and opens a door. It's love at first sight: high ceilings, hardwood floors and wainscoting, a beautiful desk, tall windows that look down on playing fields surrounded by stately trees. What a gorgeous room, Trina says. This building is actually somewhat famous. Did you ever read a children's book called The Borrowers? Mary Norton, the woman who wrote it, spent part of her childhood here. Apparently she used this house as a model for the one in her book. Seriously? I adore The Borrowers. As you may expect, says Mrs. May, there's a good deal of talk among teachers and students alike about elves and such living in the walls. I suppose it's all right as long as it doesn't get out of hand. Similar, but different. That night she emails her parents. The school looks like it's straight out of Masterpiece Theater. The head mistress reminds me of Judi Dench. And my apartment, which I shall henceforth call my flat, is within walking distance of the school. I can't wait to meet my students. The building where I'll be teaching is where the famous children's book, The Borrowers, was set. The next day she returns and begins organizing her classroom. She's brought with her a large map of Idaho, which she hopes British children will find intriguing, a print of Van Gogh's vase with sunflowers, and a poster of dancing cats. Her students in Boise thought the cats were hilarious, and with any luck, these will too. That week she explores Leighton Buzzard. When she'd first heard the name, she'd laughed. It sounded like something out of Monty Python. It turns out to be a quaint little town combined with a commuter suburb for people who work in London. At a newsstand, she buys a magazine she's never heard of, and at a bakery, a pastry called a Chelsea bun. She even discovers a large Walmart-like store called Tesco, where she wanders the aisles for an hour or more, fascinated by how things can be similar to what she's accustomed to and different at the same time. The game. Once school begins, it doesn't take long for her to conclude that British children are much like their American counterparts. They have the same energy, they're passionate about music and celebrities, and like her students back in Boise, are intensely interested in her personal life. Miss, are you married? Not yet. Is there someone you fancy? That wouldn't be any of your business now, would it? Said with a raised eyebrow and a knowing smile. By the end of her first month in Leighton Buzzard, she's decided that her decision to participate in the exchange was a good one. Her classes are going well. She's found a friend in Liz Martin who teaches math, and she spent the entire Saturday by herself in London, overwhelmed by all there is to do and see. She likes the students so much, she doesn't even mind when something of hers goes missing. Indeed, she's rather pleased. If she'd spent the year teaching in the house of the borrowers and her students had never borrowed anything from her, she'd have felt left out. The item they choose is her orange Boise State coffee mug. If nothing else, the incident will make a good story to tell when she gets back to Idaho. Then my cup went missing, and I knew the borrowers were at work. Stop there. Thanks to everyone for participating in this event. Bye.
Hi, I'm Sharon Kennedy-Nolle. How much does the Anne Frank house cost? You wrote hope in the one book you could lock, mapping first the layout of the annex, inventorying the room's details, linoleum, mahogany chairs, the stockroom's cinnamon cloves and peppers ground, the Delft toilet, laboratory sink. To the walls you turned, Underneath the tacked-up celluloid smiles, Ginger Rogers, Rudy Valley, Princess Juliana. Doodles marking hours spent sniffing at the windowsill. That rat-crack listening for gulls and bells, the Westertoren bells, their music maybe melted down for die Wehrmacht. But the bookcase, a wall of words, atlases, catalogs, account ledgers, kept the footfalls back, the eyes averted, until it finished your sentence. Now everybody knows this address. How much does the Anne Frank house cost? They all ask now, wanting mostly to get out of it. What if you walked out from under this poem, made a left on Priesengracht, along the sunlit canal, easy past cafes, aroma of cigars and licorice chocolates, kept going under the chestnuts towards Nieuwe Spiegelstraat, onto green Vondel Park, and then off the map, where the Westertoren bells can't be heard. And what if this poem, begun by a wall of words, had no ending? Thank you.
I'm Hila Amit. I'm excited to be part of the 37th issue of Emrys Journal, and I'm going to read the beginning of my story, The Kinneret, which won the Sue Leil Inman Fiction Award. The Kinneret. When she was a girl, the Sea of Galilee, or the Kinneret, as it is known in Israel, was just the Kinneret, and nowhere else in the somber land which surrounded Chagit day and night could make her emotions bob and float like that, just like her children in the inflatable tubes, swimming, spraying, squealing, giggling in the deep, dark green water. They waved at her, relishing the surrounding green and their omnipotence, swimming away until she reached out with her soft hands, drowning them in hugs and kisses, as if she had been gone for a whole year, or hadn't seen them since infancy, when they snuggled in her bosoms, hungry, sniffling, dissolving in sweetness between her breasts, tasting her milk, sucking her nipples. When the Kinneret revealed itself to them, little Noam's eyes lit up in green bonfires of cold flame. He looked out the window excitedly. The sight of the water thrilled him just as it thrilled her when she was a girl. He was so completely bewitched by the Kinneret that when Chagit parked the car, he stepped out and went to the water without even taking his shoes off, the lake glinting in his eyes. It was as if he was sleepwalking, as if it had drawn him by some mysterious force. Shrunken, shallow, polluted, the Kinneret flashed at them from the road. Driven to the water by the humid air and the merciless heat, they took dips under the orange sun that cut through every layer of sunscreen that Chagit smeared on the children. Clad in their fluorescent bathing suit, they grinned whitely at her from the water. "Mommy, Mommy," they cried out, so that she would come and help them look for molsock in their shells, for pretty stones they could bring to show and tell in the kindergarten. Before she knew lost, she had longed for the Kinneret. She sped over roads, counting down the miles all the way to Tiberias. When they made a stop for little Noam, who couldn't hold it in, the name Tiberias shone like a north star on the green side roads, planted on the side of the roads. Peeing, he turned his cute behind to the cars, darkly tanned, as if he had sunbathed all summer. His smooth brown hair blew in the wind, reminding her of his father. They were so alike back then. When Adi wanted chocolate milk, well, they stopped too. How could she resist those luxurious blonde curls, the pale freckled cheeks, those eyes, the same shadow of green as her own? The two of them came out of the same womb, but turned out so differently. They were going to the Kinneret, and they were entitled to treat themselves, to lighten their wallets. They would only think about the water, not about the overdraft fee. Chagit had to make a stop too. She told him to wait outside the store and went in, pulled her jeans down hurriedly, afraid they would run off and disappear. She kept talking to them from the toilet. She told them to count to 10, to sing the song about the seasons that they had learned in kindergarten. As long as she heard their voices, she knew they were safe behind the door. When she wiped and zipped her pants and flushed, she had already pushed the door halfway open, just to make sure they were still there, that she hadn't lost them, that nothing had happened. They went back to the car and drove on, singing the nicest song, an out-of-tune choir in a white Subaru. She had stuck all chairs in the window sheet to shield Adi and Norm from the sun, so they could doze off on the long drive. The car struggled uphill, but it was even scarier to go downhill when the shirts flapped angrily in the wind. Thank you.
Journal for selecting my poem called Mantel, bilingual poem called Mantel in English Tablecloth for this year's 2020 edition. I'm really thankful and grateful, and thanks to you for listening. Mantel. Cada domingo, Mami y Consuelo se sentaban en extremos opuestos de la mesa con agujas y hilo para bordar. Sus procedimientos y rosas sostienen el encaje blanco, y yo, de 9 años, acariciaba las fibras de la tela gastada. La de Mami era de color tierra, simple, la de Consuelo como Las Vegas, los colores brillantes. Mucho después de la misa, nos sentábamos, yo entre Mami y la pader de la cocina. Era la mensajera entre las dos comadres que charlando y burlando bebían su café. Después de cada taza, Consuelo me pedía un cubo de hielo y yo me escapaba por debajo de la mesa y me arrastraba por el suelo. Allí, los fibros desechados presaban contra mis rodillas y me dejaban bronchas. Sus dedos eran como ramas fuertes con flores de puntos blancos, las dos huyendo sus galletas en tu taza de café recién hecho y hablaban despacito. En susurros hablaban sobre papi, el cura, Iván, Lupita y sus telenovelas. El hielo quizás calmará el calor de los chismes de nuestro barrio. El mantel hoy está olvidado bajo el jarrón de rosas recién cortadas que yo lo traigo a Mami. Tablecloth. Every Sunday afternoon, Mommy and Consuelo sat at opposite ends of the table and worked inward, taking thread to needle to stitch. Each cross-stitch rose and pansy held the white lace in place. At 9, I'd sit and stroke the separate fibers of worn cloth. Mommy was earth-toned, simple. Consuelo colored bright as Vegas. Long past Mass we sat, I wedged between kitchen wall and Mommy, errand girl to two comadres chatting and embroidering over café. After each cup, Consuelo would ask me to go get a cube of ice, so I'd slip downward under the table to crawl across the floor. There, the discarded fibers pressed against my knees and left welts. Their fingers were like strong branches with white-tipped blossoms. They dipped galletas quickly into a fresh cup of café and talked quietly. In whispers they talked about Papi, our priest, Avon, Lupita, and their telenovelas. The ice I was sent to retrieve to help settle the heat of the neighborhood's gossip. The tablecloth now sits forgotten under the vase of fresh-cut roses I bring Mommy.
Thank you so much for having me here, and I'll be reading my flash fiction story, Matchpoint. Matchpoint. She flew back into her husband's childhood as a bird, heard the hollow thwop of a tennis ball, and watched him play against his pink-shirted father. His father gripped a martini in one hand, racket in the other. Sunburn, black coffee grin. Her husband's father, younger than her husband was now. "Don't tell Mom, okay, Einstein?" he said. She watched the father-in-law lose at tennis, as if racing against the sun. Saw the husband beaming, taking an internal bow. Saw him follow his father back inside, watching from a corner of the living room while his father cried. "I'm stuck here in this body, Einstein," his father said. "Don't be snide." Saw him pour himself another drink. Saw him kick the dog. saw what her husband saw, wondered, was this why? Watched him in his childhood bedroom, a 12-year-old assassin sprinkling talcum powder on his feet. They were already wide with plush feminine toes. Watched him stick the edge of a cuticle scissors into the flesh around his ankle bone, follow his own trail of blood to the windowsill. There she stood, a dumb, sad bird, already sure that he would open the window and let her in.
Hi, everyone. I'm Gaylord Brewer, sequestered in Tennessee. Hope everyone's safe and well, and I'm delighted to be joining the Emrys Journal virtual launch for the beautiful new issue. My contribution is a short prose piece titled, unlikely enough, Boudin of Longing, Kielbasa of Despair. That summer corn I just double cut for the freezer, the rough husks, resilient silks, ethereal white kernels, and sweet milk of the blade caressed along the cob. My hand's a dripping mess. It's an easy poem. For the turning, I might introduce my stocked freezer as a whimsical symbol of privilege, or maybe invoke the winter one must always prepare for, possibly an image of Grandma Brewer deaf and half blind over her stove. God forbid stir in some polemic on industrial agriculture, local farmers, maybe just a skillet, butter and salt, keep it sensual and tasty. Or forget the corn, already stacked in the cold atop last week's fava beans. Favas, with their elaborate double shelling, lend well to the poem of lonely ritual, of patience and appetite. How about some verses concerning my slippers damp from the morning dew? Or speaking long distance to my mother last night about the brief, teasing storms that interrupt their months of drought and sadness. Or the disgruntled angle of my new reading glasses upside down on the end table. A single dark feather on the gravel drive, a spill of something unknown on the counter brought to the lips on a fingertip. A cross drawn on the dusty mirror, an empty bottle of wine. Wherever you look, really. I haven't written a poem in a year. 2 years. The sun rises and sets, the moon waxes and wanes. The dog still loves me if my pocket is full of biscuits. I've noted no change in my luminous disposition. I'm sure I'll come around, the old circus of womb to grave compelling another shot at the balloons, a rigged chance for the big prize. Only my wife has noticed or seems in the least concerned. I suspect she believes that the ritual is regenerative for me, that writing poems makes me a healthier and happier man, closer to self-fulfillment, viz., easier to live with, one stanza at a time. Perhaps she's right. Pick your coarse or smooth grind, decide your level of heat and spice, opt for a natural or synthetic casing, then crank the handle. How the sausage is made. Life's mostly metaphor, anyway. Thanks for listening. Take care, and hope to see you guys down the road somewhere in a saner, happier, healthier world. Bye-bye.
Hi, my name is Karen Mitchell, and I'm honored to be a part of this space. And today I'm going to read a portion of my piece, A River in Time. I hopped on board the slightly rocking skiff. Peering out into the distance, I saw the sagging sun light up rows and rows of dancing peaks atop the gray-blue waters. The sun-filled air was damp with humidity against my bare arms. The horizon stretched for miles, broken up by meandering pockets of steel-green sawgrass poking their heads above the vibrant surface of the Edisto River Basin. A tricolored heron, appearing as if its flank of pillow-soft white feathers had been dipped in an ink blotter, cut through the 92-degree air, soaring yards above the gently moving gray and brown ripples of brackish water. A yellow tennis ball sun began its slow descent like a taffy pull from a perch high in the sky toward the clear blue baseline of wet horizon. It was 7:30 p.m., and the summer sun gradually changed shades to a fading magenta blush. Black and white warblers and the occasional great blue heron slog their way across a sky that witnessed centuries. A skirt of brackish tidal marsh lined the sides of the river. Lifesaver green smooth cordgrass buried itself into the peat base of the salty low marsh as the Carolina skiff poked its nose further and further down the waters of the Ace. Meg, a certified United States Coast Guard biologist, steered the boat. A tennis visor kept the sun, which was bouncing off her short-sleeved yellow polo, out of her eyes. Oyster shells help feed the grasses and contribute to the nutrients in the river, keeping the river healthy, Meg said in a soft voice while turning the boat. The wheel had the classic look of the steering wheel on a 1955 Ford Crown Victoria, a thin strip of polished silver gleaming in the sun. Meg was trim and athletic. Her clear, bright eyes stared forward at the water, as if she was flipping through centuries upon the river. The Ace Basin is a 1.1 million acre region stretching across South Carolina, containing the Ashepoo, Combahee, and Edisto rivers. Here, 3 historic bodies of water come together and form one of the largest legally protected ecological spaces in South Carolina. Under the Ace Basin Project, approximately 217,000 acres of land containing endangered wildlife, unique vegetation, and cultural history have all been preserved by conservation efforts and land easements. The skiff coasted down the river, and tough, skinny green leaves poked past the water's surface. I tried pulling a single reed out of the water, and it was an act of tug-of-war. In the shallows, 15 to 20 feet away from the boat, spike grass, salt hay, and black rush grew. The luminous plants populated areas higher up on the marsh in thick swatches of hay yellow and amber green that floated and fanned out gently in the wind. The salty marsh and vegetation created a nutrient-rich shelter for scuttling crab, pale baby oysters, waterfowl, and juvenile fish, all slightly tugged and stirred by the high tide of the returning ocean. Thank you.
My name is Dina Friedman, and I'm very happy to read my poem, which is called In Every Massachusetts Town. The streets are named for ghosts of trees, Ash Road eaten by the emerald borer, Elm Street ravaged by gypsy moths. We reside on Live Oak Drive, a southern hoax where my next-door neighbor once hung his hunted deer on the maple to haunt the kids waiting for the school bus. On Halloween, he heaved his door, spun in his phantom cape. Masked, he rained Twix into bags clutched by trolls and witches. The woman in the library we call Aunt Mary tells stories of her ancestor witch who wouldn't die when they hung her from a tree. Oak, I believe, though I pictured weeping willow. The neighbors cut her down, left her in the snow. When night fell, she went home. Some of the elms are coming back, the last of the geese ready for south, though many maples still intact, each year a later cooling. Aunt Mary says she can feel the core of the earth burning and each time a tree dies in town, something in her chest like choking. In her dreams, she says she sees a witch's open mouth, her blistered tongue protruding.
Hi, my name is Elaine Szewczyk. I'm the author of the novel I'm With Stupid, which was published by Hachette and optioned by ABC Studios. It's about a girl who gets stuck living with her one-night stand. I've written for McSweeney's, and this is my first time writing for this journal. And the story that appears in the journal is called The Death of Heartsick Rick. And it is about a guy who fakes his own death in an effort to win back his ex-girlfriend. And so I'm going to read you the opening of the short story. As the delivery truck carrying Lamont Rick's coffin pulled up to his apartment building, Lamont began to have second thoughts about faking his own death. From his dirty window high above the street, Lamont watched the driver, tall, cigarette between lips, in a one-piece uniform, exit the truck. The driver yelled a command in a Slavic language. Another delivery man, short and bald, opened the truck's passenger side door and slid out. The short man bit into a chicken drumstick. The two argued. On a patch of worn grass in view of the truck, Gilberta Rick, Lamont's sister and his neighbor in the building, sat in a yellow chair, sunning her legs and reading the dictionary. When the delivery men noticed Gilberta, they stopped arguing. She looked at them, closed the dictionary, and ran her thumb down its spine. The short man threw the drumstick over his shoulder and gave her a wave. The tall man smacked him on the back of his head. The drumstick lay on the sidewalk. A fly landed on its greasy, dimpled skin. Upstairs in his apartment, Lamont drew the dusty curtain and stepped away from the window. Today he would win back Millie Grossman, his ex-girlfriend. That was the plan. Oh, he missed Millie so much. Suddenly, a sharp buzzing sound filled Lamont's apartment. Lamont hurried across the living room, past his sleeping dog, to an intercom mounted to the wall. He pressed a button. "Who is it?" Lamont asked, even though he already knew. "Coffin for Mr. Rick," both delivery men yelled. The dog opened an eye. "Come up," Lamont said. He pressed a button to let the delivery men into the building. In 2 hours, Millie would be arriving for his fake funeral. He had so much to do before she got there. And that's the beginning of the short story. So thank you for listening and happy launch.
Hi, my name is Halina Duraj, and I'm reading from a short story called Bigger and Better. When Ella answered the knock at her front door, the girl gripping the bike wheel spoke first. "This might seem kind of weird, but we're playing a game," the girl said. "Bigger and better?" Two other girls stood behind her as if they'd prearranged which one would knock. One of them held a thermos, the other an empty plastic Coke bottle. All three of them had eyes rimmed in black pencil, lids coated in sparkly blue powder, shiny lips, thick eyebrows, long straight hair. Their jeans flared at the calves, cuffs bedraggled. The girls giggled at Ella's confusion. It wasn't unkind giggling, but still, Ella marveled. Even at 40, it stung to be the butt of jokes for pretty popular girls. The one with the thermos took pity on her. "It's where we go around trying to get people to give us stuff, kind of like a treasure hunt, and whichever team has the biggest and best thing at the end wins." Ella looked around her living room. She wanted to be helpful, but she had spare surfaces, empty corners. Years ago, after Leo moved out, she decluttered her house, starting with his waffle iron. She had never liked waffles. She'd always aspired to minimalism anyway. Now everything she saw was something she used or wanted. "I'm so sorry," she said to the girls, shaking her head. The girls glanced past her into the house, and Ella tried to fill the door frame to block their view in case they saw something they thought Ella should want to give them. She could think only of the recycling bin in the kitchen with its plastic bottles and aluminum cans, but none were bigger than the Coke bottle the girls already had. The girls kept standing there as if they didn't believe Ella would actually disappoint them. "I'm so sorry," Ella said, again, more firmly. "Good luck." The girls bolted as a herd, calling a belated "thank you" over their shoulders. Ella smiled. "Thanks for nothing, lady." She worried about them in their ultra-long jeans. How could they run without tripping? Across the street, a group of 4 girls jog-walked in a tight cluster. One of them hugged to her chest a giant stuffed Rastafarian banana with googly eyes, yarn dreadlocks, and a beanie in the colors of the Jamaican flag. It was almost as tall as she was and a clear indicator of victory. The sight spurred Ella's sudden, fierce loyalty. In an instant, the girls who'd come to her door became her team, her girls. Ella sped from room to room, searching for things to part with. She imagined herself sprinting down the sidewalk after the girls, offering something huge and awesome in her outstretched arms. Through the bedroom window, she glimpsed her garage. She'd decluttered the house, but never the garage. In fact, some of what she'd cleared from the house, she'd shoved onto shelves lining the garage. She rolled back the heavy door and looked at everything the girls might have wanted, everything that might have clinched the game for them. She sprinted to the corner, looked up the cross street both ways for the girls, none in sight. Girls, she wanted to call. Girls, come back. Maybe they would pass this way again. If they did, she'd be ready. In the center of the garage, she piled a picnic basket she bought on a whim in Vancouver and moved to 3 different states without ever once taking on a picnic. Snowboarding boots that were always too tight and made her hate snowboarding. A beat-up cooler with a former employer's company logo, yellowed lampshades, a red check tablecloth, a magician boyfriend yanked out from under a meal one night in an Italian restaurant just to prove to her he could. A miniature tabletop foosball game, a collapsible red nylon kitten climbing structure, a kite with the face of a cartoon dog, and so on. She piled and piled and then walked it by the armload to the street corner, the way people did in this lazy beach neighborhood. No one ever bothered putting up a free sign. Ella looked again for her girls, but didn't see them. She admired them, even as she feared them a little. Thank you for listening.
My name is Loli Molina. The name of my poem is The Good Dishes, and it starts with a little bit of a poem by Nikki Giovanni that says the following. But they are grounded in their God and in their families. They are grounded in their hearts and in minds. So my poem says the following. My mother keeps the good dishes in an old cabinet after 50 years, hoping I possess them someday. She also holds onto a coffee set and a quilt she made before she got married. Your dowry, she says, while she shows one of her few smiles buried in a deep, wide hole, digged by my father, covered with her dreams and my nightmares. Her moans are my wishes. My mother possesses the first and the last of my days, the first and the last of my thoughts, and the good dishes. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It is an honor to be part of this project. My name is Gloria Bain. I'm from Mexico, and my poem is inspired by my daughter's independent spirit. She was 14. So I dedicate this poem to all the teen survivors. I am gonna recite my poem in Spanish, and then I'll read it in English. So I hope you enjoy it. Here we go. ¿Cómo le revelo a mis entrañas? ¿Cómo explico a mis entrañas que el paisaje ya no existe? El camino está llegando, ya mis hijos no me extrañan. ¿Cómo lleno mi regazo? Me pregunto sin respuesta al pasado adolescente entre juventud soñante. Dime tu madre mía, ¿cómo perdonaste entonces aquel día tan ingrato en el cual no vi tu llanto? ¿Cuál ha sido tu secreto para ahuyentar el alba de sonrisas en sonidos y de noches de quebrantos? She answers. Hija mía, ¿qué no has visto? Tú ocupando mi regazo, las caricias por tu pelo. Sigo madre, por lo tanto. Como siempre, madre mía, tienes todas las respuestas. No hay vacíos, no hay espacios. El amor existe intacto. I'm gonna read it in English. Gotta get my mighty glasses. How do I reveal to my entrails? How do I explain to my entrails that my scenery is no longer clear, that the road is almost ending, that my children no longer miss me? How do I endeavor motherhood? I ask myself without an answer, into the adolescence world, among youngsters dreaming. Please tell me, Mother, how in the world did you forgive me on that ungrateful day when I did not see your tears? What is your mighty secret? How did you dismiss those mornings of silent smiles and those dark evenings of sorrow? My sunshine, haven't you noticed? You laying on your head on my lap, me stroking your hair with my fingers, continuing my role as your mother. As always, mother of mine, you do possess all the answers. There's no emptiness, there's no in-between spaces. Our love has remained intact. Thank you.
Old pills. The yellow bucket sits full of water and amber plastic bottles left to soak and soften labels, remove the complicated names that filled our checklists and calendars. This one on Wednesdays, that one each morning, take with food. But you wouldn't eat. Some were hidden in drawers, under cushions, found in the sweep of rooms to collect reminders. I push the paper with my fingernail, watch the faded letters of my mother's name collapse onto one another. What will not give easily, I scrape until my nails break. Stripped of memory, the bottles rest in the recycling bin. They will pick them up tomorrow or the next day.
Hello, my name is Brian McMaster. I am originally from Winsboro, South Carolina, and I currently live in Washington, D.C. I'm going to read something that I wrote shortly after my mother died. It is a piece of creative nonfiction that is entitled Duck Hunting in Mom's House. It's for Mom, Bob, Kim, and Steve. My mother was 95 when she died, and on the day of her funeral, shortly after we buried her ashes next to Dad, I caught her sneaking back into her home of the last 47 years. I was surprised. Perhaps even more surprising, Mom chose to visit her home in the form of a duck, a female wood duck to be exact. Bear with me. There's very little information on one's mother returning from the grave to inhabit a duck, even on the internet, and less about how much she remains herself and how much of her becomes, well, duck-like. But at first, I did not recognize my mother in her duck guise. And who knows what possessed Mom to choose a wood duck to inhabit for her return? Maybe the choices were limited. But wood ducks are one of the few types of duck in South Carolina that nest in the hollow of trees, or sometimes in unused chimneys. Anyway, a duck crawled into one of the 4 chimneys on Mom's house looking for a nice hollow place to nest or for a way in. The chimney she chose hadn't been used for 35 years. I know this because when the duck slowly slid all the way down the chimney, she pushed out a wadded up newspaper that my father must have shoved up there as a damper. Dated December 17, 1982, the headline read, "Bob Hope Still Entertains the Troops." She also pushed out the bones of another duck and a desiccated squirrel carcass. The damper must have been tighter at one point. When I heard the sound of a live duck, one dead squirrel, and a bunch of newspaper coming out onto the porch fireplace, I investigated. At first glance, I saw a bunch of old newspapers. At second glance, I saw a bunch of bones. And at third glance, I saw a duck leg hanging out of the tight flue. It was paddling. I got gloves and tried to catch the duck, but she decided that the chimney was better than whatever was grabbing her leg from below and scrambled back up as far as she could go. I had a wake to attend and hoped she could get out all the way out of the top. She couldn't and must have come down the chimney and into the porch while we were at the wake at Bob's house. She walked through the porch doors, pooped on Mom's red Bokhara rug, and flew down the hall into Mom and Dad's bedroom. Judging by the volume of poop, I later realized that she spent most of her time in my mother's art studio just off the bedroom. Mom was an artist. The light was lovely all day, and it was her favorite room in the house. At some point, Steve and Maggie came home and noticed nothing amiss. Evidently, Maggie is not a duck-hunting terrier. Then Bridget and I came home, and Bridget, who evidently is a duck-hunting terrier, went duck poop crazy. She ran down the hall into the bedroom and went berserk in the master bathroom. I ran in after her. Now, please pause and consider the scene. My mother's serene, powder blue vintage bathroom contains one 30-pound Kerry Blue Terrier diving into the tub, leaping out onto the toilet, up onto the counter, then turning 180 degrees to repeat the maneuver. She was chasing what I at first thought was a large, gravity-defying rat, until I realized that the rat was the duck flying around the room to get away from the dog. I calmly added my own touch of chaos to the room by yelling and chasing after the dog. I caught Bridget, carried her out, and closed the door. The duck continued flying, or rather banging around the bathroom while I grabbed the gloves. I opened the door, ducked the duck as it flew at my head and curved gracefully into Mom's studio and landed on the easel that she had painted on for 74 years. I moved to grab the duck, but she stamped her webbed foot, cocked her head at me, and fussed at me in wood duck. It was then I realized the duck was Mom. Lord have mercy. I sat down on the ladder-back chair Mom had used to rest and looked critically at her paintings and listened to Mom Duck. I didn't catch much, but she seemed unhappy with her reception in her home. After a while, she stopped fussing, and we regarded each other in silence. It might have been a minute or an hour. She made a quiet peep, jumped lightly down, and allowed me to catch her. When I carried her out of the bedroom, Bridget was waiting, and Maggie, finally realizing there was a duck in the house, joined the barking, jumping, and general bedlam. I finally got Mom Duck outside, leaving the dogs inside. I didn't want to set her on the ground, so I put Mom Duck on top of her car in the yard. She eyeballed me while fussing some more in wood duck, and this time I got it. She told me to do something about those dogs. She was sorry about the mess, and would I please clean her rug and studio. Also, she said that I needed to be more gentle when carrying lady ducks around the house. I promised, and said I'd be more gentle in the future. We looked at each other. She fluffed her feathers, leaped into the air, flew once around her home, and into the dark. Thank you.
Hello, I'm E. Wilson Young, and I'm going to read a portion of my creative nonfiction piece, Happy Anniversary, that's being published by Emrys Journal in their volume 37. I'm very excited that it's coming out in Emrys Journal, and I'm excited to share this heartwarming story with you. Though as far as I know, she never threatened to vomit on anyone. Since Mom had died 5 months earlier, we'd all been filling in the gaps she left behind in different ways, doing things like having lunch with Dad on his wedding anniversary, calling each other more often, arranging family events. And Dad had changed the most dramatically. He wrote heartfelt notes and birthday and Christmas cards for me and Ethan, and even one for Mom, memorializing her, which led to the shocking discovery that Dad has amazingly gorgeous penmanship. But how would anyone have ever discovered this when Mom had been signing everything for him for nearly 38 years? In the weeks after Mom's death, Dad called me every day, more than he ever had before, and even more frequently than Mom, who had been sensitive about intruding these unspoken rules didn't impede Dad. Our phone conversations, bloated with silence, lurched along from one topic to another until Dad would sign off by saying, "Well, son, I'm going to call you tomorrow and the next day to make sure you're all right." And I would start to cry as soon as I hung up the phone. And then reflexively, I would catch myself thinking, oh, I can't wait to tell Mom about that. And she'd be so proud of Dad that he called and did that. Sometimes I could almost follow Dad's thinking, but his giddiness at dropping a deuce in his pants remained blessedly opaque, this horrifying glimpse into my future still a ways off. At least he had a normal reaction to Ethan's threat of vomiting on him. Startled, Dad gaped across the truck cab at my brother, the urgency of the situation finally hitting him now that vomit had been added to the equation. It's nice to know that a line exists somewhere. Shitting your pants while seated next to your youngest son? What a lark! This will surely become a proud family tale recited at Christmas and birthdays from now on. "Father, remember how you nearly shat yourself with me in the truck? Why, yes, son, I do. I won't soon forget that day." And then they will both give a hearty chortle. "But being vomited on, ew, that's gross, that's weird, no." "There's a Quick Trip across the road," Ethan said, pointing at the gas station that sat across 6 lanes of 138. "I'll walk to work from there, and you can take care of business." Their arms race of bodily functions temporarily stalemated, and the Quick Trip tantalizingly within reach. Dad sought to make amends. Chastened, he said, "Son, I'm sorry, I can't get you to work." Cutting through his glee at possibly soiling himself, he sensed that he'd fallen short somehow and backslid to his less thoughtful ways. "Never mind," Ethan said. "You worry about you. I'll get to work. You worry about you. You just get yourself to that bathroom in time." I have never understood the appeal of NASCAR racing, but when Ethan told me this story, I identified with Dad and really rooted for him and for us, really, because since we're so much alike. Just as he's never been good at checking in with his body, let's say, Dad has never driven any faster than 10 miles below the speed limit. But that day, when the light turned green, the truck tires squealed and Dad gunned it through the intersection. He sped across the 6 lanes, swinging the truck into the far right lane turn lane for the Quick Trip, and with a lurching jolt of the brakes, pulled into a parking spot as close to the convenience store as possible. And sure, Dad hurried because if he crapped his pants, he would consequently incur what I imagine, and what he probably imagined too, as a Linda Blair-like retaliatory spray of projectile vomit from my younger brother. But I think something else compelled him. I think he liked people commenting on how he'd adapted to Mom's role. I think he surprised himself at how thoughtful he could be. Dad's side of the family has a strong genetic stamp. Years ago, when Dad's brother, my Uncle Kimsey, died, his colleagues from the hospital all commented on how easily they could identify family members. "You can tell who you belong to," they said. I belong to Dad. I look like him. I'm named after him. And while I don't yet have his same glee at shitting my pants, I do take after him a lot, mentally as well. And he's really stepped up after Mom died. And I'm really happy to belong to Dad in that regard as well. That day at the Quick Trip, Ethan ran in and bought cigarettes in the same amount of time that it took Dad to do this clenched sphincter tiptoe to the entrance of the Quick Trip. At the automatic doors, Ethan and Dad nodded as they passed, as if to wish the other Godspeed as they went about their day, Ethan to work and Dad to the toilet. So what happened? Did he make it? You're going to have to check out volume 37 of Emrys Journal. Thank you so much.
Hello, my name is John Sibley Williams. I'm I'm excited to say that I'm going to be reading a poem that is going to be in the volume 37, the upcoming issue of Emrys Journal. And this poem is titled Leaving Coins on the Eyes of the Living. Winter wasn't made for its own weather. Like my body, how it just sways there over a lover's body, as if over a coffin, as if before a mirror. Hardwired to self-immolation, how it takes the faithful so much trial and error to keep the gasoline from their clothes. God, how nothing that loves us has spent such eternities devising fire for our failures. I have a son I'll lose by clutching too tightly, a country whose name I keep pretending to forget. For the dead to live again, we have only to leave them be. No such thing as stillness, even in this carpet of snow. No such thing as carrying a cross when it's the doubt that holds us together. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, then I'm assuming you will probably love the next issue of Emrys Journal, so keep an eye out for it. Take care.
Greetings. My name is Janice. I'm so pleased to be part of the Emrys Journal virtual launch party. I'm going to read the opening pages of my short story, Spinning Song. Spinning Song. The job. It had all started so well. Every weekday, Cynthia met Denny at the loading dock behind the outlet mall at 11 a.m. She and Tim shared one car, so usually Tim drove her, and they waited in the car together until Denny cruised up. But today she'd walked. The snow was frozen into a smooth, sharp crust, and it glinted cruelly. Cynthia wore thick mittens, but her fingers ached with cold by the time she climbed into the truck. Denny had Christmas music playing. He sang along in a quaking tenor as she settled into her seat, and Cynthia felt a little better. She adjusted her scarf and looked at Denny, who was drinking tea out of a thermos. He was a short, wiry man with a red face and a considerate nature. When Cynthia met him, she'd known right away that they would work well together. Lemongrass, she said. It smells good in here. Yeah, I'm coming down with something. First his son had had it, he said, then his wife, now apparently him. That's the way it goes. Denny shrugged. Cynthia pulled open the bulkhead door that led to the back and hung her bag of snacks just inside. The truck was full, boxes cramming the shelves and lining the floor. There was almost no room to walk. It's going to be a long day, Denny said, and Cynthia nodded. Her job was to ride shotgun and carry packages from the truck while Denny ferried them around their route. Though sometimes Denny delivered packages too, and they both worked in the back, getting boxes ready to run out to the doorsteps. They needed money, she and Tim. They always needed money, but this year it was worse. The economy was slowing down. There was the new president and his ideas about trade. Cynthia only vaguely understood the ramifications, but Tim said it was bad. And she saw how it affected things at home. The sex had slowed down to a virtual crawl, for one thing. Not enough coming in, Tim would worry. Bills spread in drifts on the dining room table. I'll get another job, Cynthia said. She already babysat Prince Imperial 3, whose real name was Bliss, next door. When Cynthia babysat, one of her tasks was to make Bliss a special kind of oatmeal. The oatmeal was free of something, gluten, preservatives, and looked like it was made of twigs. The child never ate it. In any case, Tim thought another job was a great idea, which meant she actually had to do something. Denny and Cynthia always delivered in the industrial park and the mall first, then they delivered in residential, what Denny called res. They returned to the businesses to pick up their outgoing before 5 p.m., and then it was back to res to finish up deliveries. Cynthia liked that last part best, the way Denny turned up the radio and they drove through the suburban night streets. She wore cracked rubber cleats that she secured to her boots with rubber bands. She crab-walked up driveways, slick with ice. When she rang the bell, people came to the door and treated her like a hero, bearing as she was the guitar video games and the tins of nuts, the boxes and flat sweater bags from failing department stores. Yesterday, there was a bike. "We've got our work cut out for us today," Denny said. He regarded a tower of boxes just past the bulkhead, then took a long drink of tea. "I'm ready," Cynthia said, and she meant it. She watched Denny grab the box tower, which was meant for a place called Saverchem. Saverchem made chemicals that went into food, and it stank to high heaven in that place. A different smell every day. Yesterday it was hamburger flavor, and that was a bad one, like something someone hacked up. The job idea just came to her one day. As she stared out the window and held a squirming Prince Imperial on her lap, a delivery truck had prowled by, brown as houses, and when she called, it turned out the company did need extra package handlers through the holidays. Cynthia had thought that if she did this for a month or two, things would settle down at home. Then maybe she could quit and go back to just the babysitting, which was only once in a while. Because here was the thing. Cynthia liked keeping the apartment sparkling clean and doing the grocery shopping while Tim worked. You weren't supposed to say that, but it was true. Thank you.